top 8 companies that made money. Right? I was sitting with the British Airways CEO, and he said, congratulations, Kenya Airways, because we're called out as one of the best run airlines. But of course, a lot of things shifted. We used to say, take the Africa, bring world to Africa and take Africa to the world. We are a hub and spoke. We had a hub and spoke model. You're picking people from West Africa, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, take them to the world. But then you have these global companies that have joined. Emirates, go to Nigeria. Qatar, Etihad, all of them. They go to Ghana. So the cake, the cheese, as the book, the cheese moved. So when the cheese moved, perhaps you did not move as fast. And then you start get caught up. This, if you look at the whole aviation value chain, the people who make money, and you can draw the graph, 30% of the money is made by global distribution systems because you got to have your inventory in the global market, right? Airline makes 1%. Look at the website of Delta, American Airlines, and all these big airlines, which were protected for a long time by Chapter 11, bankruptcy law in the U.S. That once you are in the red, you're protected. Nobody will come and auction your assets. We don't have the same protection here, right? So, airline is extremely complex, because it's extremely expensive. Those assets are extremely expensive. One 787 could go almost to 15, 18 billion shillings. One. Now, if you fly fresh air between Nairobi and New York, you burn 85,000 kilos of fuel, jet fuel. Who pays for that? And that becomes now, then you have to be careful. Is it a political route or is it a commercial route back to our business case? When we were there, we stalled going to the US because a 787 out of the network for 3 days, 4 days, doing only one route is a loss. It kills the whole airline, right? You fly fresh air half to New York, you lay over in New York, you have 2 sets of crews, you have crews in New York, you fly back, half fresh air, you kill the airline.
I'd like to just also get back to telecom. Which country has successfully kept the old government-owned telecom? Which country in the world has successfully kept one alive? None. If there are anywhere where government sniffs telecommunications now, it is a dead company. British Telecom, look at it. What happened? Vodafone came out of that. And BT then became like Telecom. BT is now owned by private investors. Still the same name. And it operates globally, including in this country. Yeah? France Telecom, the same thing. That became Orange. Right? Orange even came to operate in this country.
Yeah.
Right? Not owned by the government, but owned by private equity companies. So telecommunications is a place that requires big money and requires private equity, requires people who can throw money. It also requires, in some instances, it requires patient capital, right? Because getting money out of telecoms takes time. It's not, just like oil. It's the same thing. It takes time. You require patient capital. So I think this discussion around telecom and hot air, paying for air and everything else, I would rather start a discussion around how can government completely divest, take its money and run out of telecom, right? And put it into the people who know about running telecom on a global basis. The world today, doesn't matter which industry you're in, is a connected world. And if you're going to play in one place, that place you're playing in had better be large, like China or the US. But if you want to play in one place like Kenya or Uganda or wherever it is, and you're looking at this connectivity that we have, which is the digital world, and you're looking at infrastructure, you need somebody who's got deep pockets.
But looking at the ban of all these telcos, talking of Safaricom or talking of Airtel, on what infrastructure are they running on? Isn't it?
They used to invest in infrastructure, but the current movement around the world is that they're now becoming technology companies and they're selling off their infrastructure to infrastructure companies. American towers, yeah, and people like that are now buying all the infrastructure and they're becoming infrastructure companies. Yeah, so you're seeing this evolution over time as companies begin to realize that having a whole bunch of infrastructure sitting, and one tower which is owned by Safaricom could actually host all the telecom companies in the country. But each one has gone and built their own, right? And you're trying to cover the same area, and each one of you is building up towers and everything else. It's expensive, and people are realizing, dispose of it, right? Let our business be to actually run technology, and the towers business. We can put our infrastructure, can put our transmitting equipment onto more towers if we let somebody else have the towers, and we get better density, and then we get better, we get better money back. Yeah.
The point that you say,
up so that and then we just get closing remarks.
I think the point that you make, that Telcom had a lot of assets, needs no gainsaying. What obviously was required is, and probably what there's been talk about a lot of, is what we call infrastructure sharing. Kenya Communications Authority has got an infrastructure sharing regulation, I think. As to how well it has been utilized, I'm not too sure. But even in terms of sharing towers, antennas and all, it's also important to be aware that there are what we call inactive infrastructure that can be shared. But there are active devices which you can't share. So each organization, each company has got to have its own. But in principle, having infrastructure sharing is key. Maybe lastly, in this regard, the BAL, I don't think the issue we're talking about is whether to divest or privatize or not. I think the key issue with Telecom Kenya is the manner in which it was done. Of course, there's still a few state-owned companies that